call to order the Saline Area Schools Board of Education meeting for Tuesday, June 5th, 2015 at 6:30. I used to think the hardest thing a board member ever had to do was do an expulsion hearing. Sorry. Until Mr. Holden passed away yesterday, so we're obviously offer our condolences to the Holden family. And Dave was a excellent board member, a good force, and he will be missed. So we kept his tag out for today, just to make the void a little less the next day. I don't know, anyone else has anything to say? All right, we're going to please stand for a moment of silence, and then we'll go into the flag. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This is the part of the meeting where public comment. Anyone may address the board for up to 3 minutes or request time to be scheduled on a future agenda by filling out the How to Address the Board of Education form that is provided prior to each meeting. Please note, Board of Education members will not respond directly to public comment. Individuals addressing the board should take into consideration the rules of common courtesy with public participation. Portion of the meeting cannot be used to make personal attacks against a board member, district employee, or student. Do we have any public comment tonight? Administration, Mr. Graydon.
Just two quick updates. One is I would like to thank the students, the staff, the family, the board for all their work. We kind of put the 2014-15 school year to bed today, and it's been a great year. I really appreciate all the time, energy, and effort, and focus that the organization has put forward. These continue to be challenging times. We're going to talk about challenging situations coming up. We obviously had a challenging situation yesterday, but again, continue to be amazed at the talent that resides within this school district. I'm proud of that. And then, speaking of talents, we do have one entity that's continuing to go on. Our girls soccer team plays on tomorrow night at 7 o'clock at Spring Arbor versus East Kentwood, and when they win, they will be in the state finals on Saturday at 4 o'clock up at Michigan State. So very proud of their accomplishments this year, as well as the accomplishments of all of our other programs this year.
Thank you. Board of Education members.
There was a foundation meeting this morning, and they just are doing amazing things. Just for your calendars, August 20th, 7 o'clock. So before everybody comes back to school is the downtown pep assembly. We want to make sure that the community is out and a part of that. October 6th, there's a kickoff, and every year they tend to kind of change the venue and theme, and this year it will be in the Performing Arts Center, where they will have Bonnie Rideout do a concert, and there'll be dinner and an afterglow, and we want to make sure we have lots of people out supporting the foundation. And also this year, instead of a car raffle, there's going to be a truck raffle, and so all those people that have been waiting for a truck, now is the time to start thinking about that. And in August, the tickets will be available, and so you can look forward to that coming up in August. And then the date for the snow blast is going to be February 6th, so those important dates to check on your calendar for the foundation.
Diana?
I did have something I wrote on behalf of David, and the reason I'm going to read it now is because I think it would make him smile hope it would anyway. Let's put my glasses on. I knew David as an adversary and as a fellow board member. As a result, for me, David was an acquired taste. Although we were not always on the same page, we did find occasional common ground. It was a very pleasant surprise to find him a gentleman and a man with strong beliefs and opinions who could express and defend them in an intelligent and thoughtful manner. Our family expresses our deepest sympathy to his family and his friends, and we thank David for his service to our community.
Thanks. I would like to thank everyone who helped with the graduation last weekend. Despite the weather, it went off without a hitch. It was good. I will mention that we are thinking of holding graduation indoors next year at maybe the Eastern Convocation Center. So if anyone, you know, any parents of seniors or other community members, if you have any thoughts about that, please let us know. We've already gotten a few emails asking us to try to make it weather independent. So anyone has any thoughts about that, let us know, please. And I'd also echo Mr. Graydon's comments. It was a very good school year, and thank everybody for all your hard work this year. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda as printed?
So moved.
Support?
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, hearing none, the motion passes. I should say, sorry, I'll interrupt the flow of the agenda right now. Mr. Heft is out of town with his family, and according to board policy, we cannot have a vacancy in the president or vice president position, so we are appointing Mr. Heft to be vice president for the end of the school board year, and there'll be a new election next year at our organizational meeting in January. Since I did speak with him yesterday, and he agreed to take it, but he's not here to say no anyway, so it's a done deal. So sorry, that little piece of bookkeeping. Our first scheduled report is the recognition of our 2015 retirees.
All right, I'll turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Mr. Ellis.
If we could have our retirees please come up near the flag here as a group. The last hour and a half or so, we've had the opportunity to recognize a group of individuals who are retiring from Saline area schools here today. And with us tonight, we have Lynn Coughlin, who is retiring from Heritage, Suzanne Gordon, who is retiring from the middle school, Kelly Hickey, who is retiring from Pleasant Ridge, Roger Lighthizer, who is retiring from the middle school, Mary Ellen Moisky, retiring from Harvest, and Sharon Zabinko, retiring from Heritage. During the retirement recognition, each of their principals or direct supervisors had an opportunity to say a few words about them, and it's always a very nice day of the year to see people smiling as they walk out the door. Also to have some of our former employees come back to celebrate with them. Each of them receives a retirement clock, and I told them they'd hear this a second time, but I want the people at the board meeting to know as well. They receive a plaque or a poem, and the poem reads, it's called The Builder. It says, I once saw a group of men in my hometown, a group of men tearing a building down. With a heave and a hoe and a mighty yell, they swung a beam and the sidewall fell. And I asked the foreman, are these men skilled, the kind you'd hire if you wanted to build? He laughed and said, why no indeed, common labor is all I need. For I can tear down in a day or two what it took the builder 10 years to do. And I asked myself as I walked away, which of these roles am I going to play? Am I the type that constantly tears down as I make my way foolishly around? Or am I the type that is trying to build with care, with the hope that the people will be glad I was there? And as I expressed to them here a little bit ago, on behalf of Saline Area Schools, we are very happy you were here. We're very happy you're part of our organization, and our team, and our family. And we look forward to having strong relations with all of you for years and years to come. So thank you.
report is Paul McCullough from Jody Galinsky.
Yep, I'd like to invite Jody and Mr. Hasselbeck and Mr. McCullough forward.
I'd like to volunteer just to say I'm so sorry for your loss on behalf of the high school administration and the Southwest Washtenaw Consortium. I know Mr. Holden was a big supporter of career and tech ed, and he was always there for us. So, I have the pleasure today to introduce to you Stephen Hasselbeck, who has been the welding teacher for the past 5 years, and he's just done an absolutely outstanding job. He has built this program up when we had one section, now it's 2. Just an absolute wonderful job with Project Lead the Way. And then I'm going to let him say a few words about Paul. But before that, I want to say just a couple words about Paul. In the past, through Washtenaw Community College, we've had 2 former Saline students that have gone on and done an absolute wonderful job, not only at the state, national level for Skills USA, but have represented the world, and they both placed second in the world. And these students did not take first in the state, where here's Paul taking first in the state this year and will be representing the state of Michigan for the competition. He is also practicing at Washtenaw, and I will bet you'll hear more about him to represent the world, my guess. So we also have our graphics program, screen printing, and the photography will be represented for Skills USA for Michigan, and we have our advanced automated manufacturing. I'm going to let Stephen talk a little bit about Paul.
Well, Paul makes it pretty easy to talk about him. He's just an outstanding student. I mean, academically, and his accolades are proven because of his hard work and determination. He's, the student who is after school every day and putting in 110%, and then he takes what he learns and what he knows and what works for him, and he's always in somebody else's booth saying, hey, this is what works for me. Hey, why don't you try this? Or, and always trying to share, the little tips and tricks that make him as good as he is today. And even though school is out and he's graduated and all that, he has not taken a break. He's still in the booth about 10 hours a day, practicing, preparing for our trip to nationals, which is in Louisville, June 22nd. So we're very excited to be traveling down there and representing not only our consortium and our school district, but also the state of Michigan, and looking forward to results there to go on to the next step. It's really exciting. But everything Paul has competed in this year, there are 5 major overall competitions, starting with the Washtenaw Invitational, Skills USA Regionals, Skills USA States, Fair State University, and the American Welding Society, and Paul swept all of them. I mean, just blew them all away. So he's got a bunch of welding machines, a bunch of scholarships, a bunch of other cool helmets and whatnot. His workshop is pretty much fully ready to go. So it's quite amazing for a young man of his age. So just very proud of you, Paul.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Thank you.
When I toured over there earlier in the season, can you just explain like what one of your tasks is in competition? People know it's not just about soldering gun and putting things together.
When I first get there, there is about a 30-minute session of, it's kind of like a prepping session where you'll get in, you'll be handed a blueprint, and they'll have it up on a projector, and they'll go over the weld symbols and what welding process to use on what specific weld joint. And then you will build either 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 of these little, not little, but kind of like, you're following the blueprints to assemble a piece that's in front of you, and you have to know what the symbols mean and what welding process to use. And at the American Welding Society competition, it was actually a pressure vessel, which means that all the welds have to work together, and then you actually pressurize the vessel up to 1,000 pounds per square inch, and mine was the only one that was tested that actually held pressure. So I did well in that category.
So yeah, like you were saying, there's several projects, so, and the processes could be gas tungsten arc welding, whether it be steel or stainless or aluminum, and then you would have oxy-fuel cutting exercise, shielded metal arc welding exercise or stick welding, and a gas metal arc welding, which is MIG, and then also a flux core element. So this particular project incorporated all of those processes onto one massive little unit. They put a spout on it and pumped 1,000 pounds of water pressure in there, and it held, so it's pretty sweet.
Congratulations, good luck.
Thank you.
Our next scheduled report is the PTO, PTA updates.
I'll let Mr. Lodge turn over. First, I'd like to thank, we talked earlier in the year, the PTO, PTA representatives came forward and kind of talked to us a little bit about the year and how things are going, and this is an opportunity here on the last day of school to get a quick recap of how things went in each building.
Right, and this is a group that puts so much time and effort into the buildings. This morning we were at Cheryl and the Foundation for Saline Area Schools thanking volunteers, and this is a group of people that are in the schools constantly working for our kids, and we just want to make sure everybody knows we appreciate you. So let's give you a hand. At any rate, so like Mr. Grade said, we're going to have a little recap from each of the buildings and some of the new members of the PTO and PTAs here. So why don't we just start with me? I'll introduce the who's here from the buildings that exiting and some are staying. And why don't we just start with Darcy? You want to talk Woodland Meadows?
Yeah, we had a fantastic year. We ended up fundraising about more than $14,000 than we anticipated. And we released some of our funds that we had left over. We ended up buying 79 mini iPads, 36 Chromebooks. We also bought mini iPads for Mrs. Roberts, our MTSS coordinator, Mrs. Lodge, our art teacher. We got ukuleles for Mr. Sindrick, Spanish books for Mr. Bowles, and our librarian, Mrs. Meyer. And we'll be getting a buddy bench for the playground sometime over the summer and be ready for the fall. We had great people. It went really well. And it's a good group coming in as well. Some are staying and some are new. So I'm sure you'll see good things from them next year.
Another thing that's nice, about every month and a half, every 2 months, I'll get together with this group, and they're a good sounding board for myself when we're talking about curriculum issues and what's going on in the buildings. And this group helped me understand, well, what are some of the things we should be working on and the issues, so I value your opinion as well. I also appreciate what this group has done this year, in particular, that they've made sure that some of the buildings used to carry these bigger fund balances and the PTO and PTO budgets, and they made sure that, hey, this is money that parents are donating to the district and the school, and that needs to be spent for the kids there. And this group has done a really great job understanding that and making sure that the money, because we talk about what people are spending, I mean, this is going back to our kids, and a great amount, so it's definitely appreciated. Julie, you want to talk about Harvest?
Sure. Harvest had a great year again. We met our goal and went above it. And we basically just put more money into technology. We did a lot of things in the school with more technology in each of the classrooms. And in third grade, we got Chromebooks this year, a different shift. But that's basically, we're kind of in that push of technology, and that's what we've been funding for the past couple of years. And Janet Smith will be the president next year, and she will do a fabulous job.
Thanks, Julie. Okay. And then Pleasant Red and Thick, Ann and Jennifer. Ann,
You know me, I have to have my hand out, so. Oh, come on, Jennifer. I'll sit right there. Couldn't see half of you guys from where I'm sitting, so. I know, I was hiding from you.
All right, so as that thing goes around, just a reminder, our vision is to be regarded as an indispensable partner to Saline area schools and specifically to the Pleasant Ridge staff in our joint pursuit of nurturing and developing successful lifelong learners within a world-class school district. And that's really was our focus over the last 2 years, and I think we've come a long way. In November, when I was here speaking with you, our focus was on driving engagement through things like focusing on kindergarten parents and really reaching out, trying to get more people involved. Fun events, pancake supper, school dance, carnival, that kind of stuff, and curriculum events, so art night, math night, science fair, that kind of stuff. And wishes from you were focused in 4 areas. Focus on class size, continued focus on safety, continued investment in buildings and grounds, and to secure funding for wide-scale next-gen implementation. So class size, obviously we're a big group of us here about a month ago. Really looking forward to seeing the board take us to a new place in Saline, and I know there's a ton of us out here ready and willing to engage in conversation, task force, whatever it's going to take. I know it's an extremely complicated issue to solve, but I appreciate the support that came back to us through your words, that you heard us, and that there's going to be some movement trying to figure that one out. So appreciate on that. Regarding safety, buildings, and grounds, I spoke this that really looking to see some movement on this. I know it's wrapped up into the bond, particularly for Pleasant Ridge, where the layout is really not ideal from a safety perspective. Can't really say we've seen much on this one over the last 18 months, so I know the bond is a key piece of that. Ask you to continue to keep that in the forefront as you move forward. Buildings and grounds. I decided to be a photographer today. We're not making much progress on this one. I'm going to pass these around. This first one you might look at and say, that looks like a nice grass area. It's not grass, it's fully weeds. It's supposed to be mulch. This is from Pleasant Ridge, Heritage, Woodland Meadows, and Harvest. H's, I always get confused on my H's. So that represents those 4 schools. I'm sure it's the same at the middle school. As you look at budgets, what can we do differently with buildings and grounds? And when you've got dads talking on the side of baseball fields about, we just need to all meet up there with our lawnmowers and just get after it. Like this is, we talk about being number 6 in the state. This is not what number 6 should look like. So I strongly urge you to continue to look at how can we fund buildings and grounds better, so that we can stay on top of things like weeds and make ourselves look presentable. And then lastly, the secure funding for wide-scale next-gen implementation. Very happy that we're on track to be putting the bond forward in November. Again, we're all here to help. So reach out and we will be moving forward. Regarding performance, you can see the numbers in front of you. For the last 2 years, we had a nice bump. We raised $50,000 a year for the last 2 years. And the spending number is even more fun, related to what Mr. Lotch said. We spent almost $130,000 over the last 2 years, and that's because Pleasant Ridge was sitting on a huge fund balance. You can see on the right where we've put that money, huge amounts put against technology. Lots and lots of iPads and Chromebooks and smart boards, some next-gen space. The other place that you'll see that's different is in a teacher appreciation line item. We completely renovated the teacher lounge at Pleasant Ridge. We really wanted our teachers to feel loved, quite honestly, and we felt like that was a good time to do it. So moving forward, where's the focus for Pleasant Ridge? We are looking to get more balanced. It won't be as much of a push against technology, hoping that bond is going to settle things out where the PTA isn't responsible for all of that. And thinking about books and other support, the next gen space, how can we get more of that into the classroom, and the furniture and the different pieces that are starting to work in these next gen classrooms. So the Pleasant Ridge staff is really focused on where do we go next, and the next PTA is figuring out how to fund it. So speaking of next PTA, so we have 3 new officers. I'm going to introduce Jennifer Stebbin, and she's going to take you through where we're headed, but we've got 3 new officers, 4 returning, and we open up 4 new positions to get more people onto the PTA board and get them engaged at a level that is a little bit more of a manageable chunk for somebody new. So it has been a great 2 years for me, the most rewarding experience of my life. To see the difference at Pleasant Ridge, it's been an honor to be a part of it, and I appreciate the support that you guys have given to help make that happen. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Jennifer, and she'll take you through the focal points. So I have to follow this tonight, and I have to follow her last 2 years with my next 2 years. Anne has been such a terrific asset, so thank you. I am so grateful that we have her for another year, so I can continue to learn from her. And hello, everyone, again. It was really nice to have you at Pleasant Ridge a couple of weeks ago for our board meeting. It was nice meeting you. I think that you're going to find that Anne and I are very, very aligned on a more wider scale rollout of educational technology in next-gen classrooms. That's my professional background, so I'm particularly interested in that. The safety of the buildings, the landscaping and the safety of the grounds as well, and our class size. So again, looking really forward to seeing what the bond might be able to help us with, particularly with safety with our building. I think the 3 focal points for the coming year, it's been interesting. I've been looking at our calendar for next year, trying to figure out, what are we going to keep the same, what are we going to change, and why. If we're going to change something, why are we going to change it? I think the first thing I'm looking at is fundraising. I love fundraising. Loved working with Cheryl and the foundation on Snow Blast this year, like getting all that money back into the schools. But I think it has to be purposeful. Some of the activities that I think we're working on, I want to look at what the return on investment is. How many volunteer hours go into making $15,000 at the auction? How many volunteer hours go into X, Y, or Z event? And adding some more social events that are called like light fundraising, and everything infusing PR pride into what we do. I think our building is incredible. I wrote the blog for this month for our PTA website, and I had to think about, what do I write about? Why did I want to do this? And I think the reason I really wanted to do it is because we are so lucky to be in that building for 4 years. And I want everyone else to feel that pride and everyone else to feel that confidence as they move on to Heritage and elsewhere in the district. And I think all of the events and everything that we do is really going to be rolled up in that PR Pride package. We want to get more parents involved. At the foundation this morning, we talked about, someone mentioned the diversity of the membership over the past several years and how we were seeing a lot more men and a lot more families kind of get involved. And that's what we're going for too. So parental involvement, purposeful fundraising, and always PR Pride. So looking forward to it. Thanks.
Thank you.
And then Dawn from Heritage can't be here tonight. She did want to pass on that she's at class. So she gave me a report, and I can kind of touch base. We're excited with Heritage next year. It's the focal point of the Foundation for Saline Area Schools strategic grant, and the name has been announced. It's Launch, Foresee the Future. Has a lot to do with project-based learning, continuation of Project Lead the Way, which is at the middle school and the high school now. And so we're really excited about that. This PTO at Heritage is voting on $20,000 to also support that grant for next year, so we can pair up with the foundation and the PTO at Heritage to really raise funds so we can do some great things in the area of training and project-based learning, foresees education. So we're all excited about that. Other things that have happened this year, new furniture in the pods now at Heritage. So if you go in there, you're going to see a little different space set up, which is more in line with some of the things we're doing with the other buildings. They purchased 32 iPad minis, 7 Chromebooks, and they're getting ready to put in Gaga ball pits on the playground, which is going to be exciting for our students. And so a lot of great things happening at Heritage that we're excited about. Let's see, how about Lori at the middle school?
What is Gaga?
Yeah, who can explain it? I don't know that I'm the best person. Here, Brennan, go ahead.
What it is, it's like dodgeball, only you play in an arena and you have to hit the ball with your hands, and you have to hit it against somebody's legs. If they catch it, you're out. If you hit their legs, they're out.
Huh?
It's
I have a 10-year-old who he goes to Boy Scout camp just to play Gaga.
Yeah, they love this. That's what I know. So, how about the middle school?
Okay.
Take
Yeah,
us through.
Gaga ball is not for adults. It's not. We have a few new board members coming in and a few that are staying, and then there's going to be some that are kind of consistent. So that'll be good, getting new blood in and these energetic elementary parents. Yay! As you hit middle school, we slow down a little bit. But so. When we get to the high school. No, we're going to change a few policies and kind of streamline some things. last couple of years, it's been just cumbersome, and the middle school's not that way. You know, like we're gonna change a little bit of our grant process, kind of streamline how we're getting volunteers. We started doing a weekly newsletter, kind of like Steve, but we send ours out on Tuesdays or Wednesdays. And so we're gonna streamline that a little bit. We tried something new, you know, just trying to kind of engage our parents so they can't make it to our meetings, but we have great volunteers. I just helped coordinate the 8th grade celebration, and we probably had 25 parents take the day off, come in, help coordinate, get set up. So when they can be there, they're there. So we need to keep engaging and, you know, keep that out there. We raised just under $29,000. Our budget was just under $29,000. We did about $13,000 in just hassle-free, which was great, and we gave out $14,000 in grants to the school. There were a lot of other expenses in there, but specific grants. Some of them were next-gen classroom. We bought some furniture and things to kind of help support that. We did the positive behavior intervention support, the kinder than necessary. The signage for those who are in the classrooms. Paid for web training, we got new laminators, so we bought some really big ticket items as well as some classroom support things for the science department, and bought a license for Project Lead the Way for David Yon, and things like that that kind of help support. We try and have our grants touch as many kids as we can, but sometimes, and that's one of the things we're going to change this year too, is our 6th grade being self-contained, we're kind of in a different element because those are really individual classrooms, so the grants need to look different for them versus 7th and 8th. And then every year we give $100 to each teacher for certified teacher. They don't have to be a classroom teacher, for classroom supplies. So trying to help support that to kick off the beginning of the year for them. So it was a great year. Parents were really supportive financially and volunteering. Our hassle-free is, we made almost $4,000 more than last year. So, you know, our parents are great, and we have those energetic, we love the heritage parents coming up. So we've got a few on our board. So actually Darcy and Julie are on our board next year. So it'll be good. So it'll be a good year next year.
And then how about Barb at the high school?
I'm gonna stand up because I can't see you people around. I can't see, I'm shorter than you. Okay. I just wanted to kind of update you. We did the majority of our spending, our big funding right up front, so we already talked about it when we met way in October, I think it was. So the first time that we met. But our planned budget was just under $23,000, and we actually ended up getting in 25 plus some change $1,000. So we had a good year with the hassle-free fundraiser. We did get a little bit of money from the selling of those foundation car raffle tickets. That was good. And we also have some rewards programs that we regularly do. Our expenditures, like I said, back at the beginning of the school year, was our Chromebooks and cards. We did $11,000, just over on that. And we always have our regular spending that we do every year. We support our freshman class coming in and help them with startup funds, link crew, teacher, staff appreciation. We had a new lady in charge of that this year. She did a phenomenal job the entire week. We do the planners for the freshman class coming in. So those are basic expenditures every year. Volunteers, same thing. We didn't do anything new that I can think of with volunteers this year. We had the homecoming volunteers. We have the startup, the for school, putting together all the packets that we mail out to the teachers. We had a bunch of us were out for graduation in the freezing cold, helping seat the folks that were going in the handicap areas, and you know, just stuff like that. We did have speakers again this year. Kim Bryant, who is the one of the undergraduate admissions ladies at University of Michigan. She's always a huge draw. We had more people this year. I think there were over 75 people this year at the PTO meeting that she was at. We also invited Officer Neeb, who is the new police officer liaison officer that's stationed at the high school, to come in and give us a little update on, you know, how he perceives it, how his philosophy was different than the last person's that was our liaison. So we had him as a speaker, did a great job. And then we asked Scott to come back, Mr. Gray again, and he did the climate survey, the results of the one we had last year. So I think we're going to invite you back again next year for that, as well as the end of school year survey that we do as well.
So you need to try to outdraw.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's, we're just going to make her a regular because she does a fantastic job. And then next year, I want to introduce Carmen Woods. Carmen was our treasurer this year. She's going to be our new president next year.
Hello.
And then the whole rest of the board is new. So we've got a lot of new folks. We've got Lisa Rentschler is going to be our new VP. Lori Holloway, she and her husband own the Voila Salon in town. She's going to be our new treasurer. And Michelle Doran and Jennifer Kolchak are going to be our co-secretaries. And we've got plans. We've got a meeting coming up that I'm going to come in. But it's for the new board, and they're going to sit down with Julie, and they're going to talk about plans for next year, setting the budget. But I do know one of the new things that we're talking about doing is trying to get a program to help out the new kids that come into the high school that are actually new to Saline itself and haven't ever been in the district. So do some kind of new program. I believe that Brian Bruckman is going to be heading that up from the counseling department. So we're going to try to bring that in, maybe add in something with new parents coming into Saline and things. But we haven't talked. But that's one of the new things we're talking about. We've got other ideas, but we'll wait till they'll let Carmen tell you next year. And that's about it. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you all for everything you do. It makes, I guess, our job partying out the budget a little easier because there is all that support out there. Make sure you always thank your parents for their donations and everything because it's part of the big puzzle that makes everything work around here. So thank you. Next scheduled report is our bond presentation by King Scott.
First of all, I'm not King Scott.
I know you're
Okay.
not King Scott.
I saw that on there. That I like that. But I do want to. The conversation with the PTA does dovetail very nicely into what we're going to talk about tonight. I think we have heard loud and clear, really for 2 years, and particularly back in October, where the message was really around. Okay, you know, our parents, our community have stepped up in terms of providing technology and providing support, a lot of furniture and other things, certainly from a facility standpoint, whether it's buildings and grounds or HVAC and climate control. Those are things that I think we're ready, we need to address. I mean, we really are in a position where we need to address those. And so one of our issues that we've talked about now for 2 years on the board is also this capital planning facility assessment piece, and what are the strategies that we can use to really address these things, not only from a short-term standpoint of things that need to get done, but also to be thoughtful about if we are to go for a bond issue, what can we look at from a standpoint of a stage planning approach to really address these over time. And so we have a structure in place that doesn't put us in what really can be, in Michigan, a boom and bust cycle in terms of you have a bond issue, you get a dump of money, you spend 85% of it within 3 years, and then 6, 7 years later, you need to do that again. And we're looking at a planned approach to that. And so we've engaged the services of King Scott Architects out of Kalamazoo to help us with this process, and really has led us over the last several months down this path of what are the things we need to be thinking about as we move forward to make sure we're meeting the needs of our community, but certainly meeting the needs, as we talked about, the parents and families of the students we have with us. So on that note, I'll turn it over to Brendan Pollack.
All right, thank you.
To walk us through the presentation.
Very good. Okay, so the purpose behind the whole planning process as we approach a facility assessment and look at your facilities is to say, okay, let's benchmark your facilities against what a brand new facility would be. So a modern 2015 school facility that meets all the current codes and requirements. And then to look at your facility and say, okay, where are the deficiencies? So we've taken our architects, our engineers, interior designers. We've spent about 400 hours total looking at your facilities and kind of going through a prioritization and assessment of those. We've looked at things all the way from safety and security as you enter the site, your site and civil safety and security. As you approach the door, how do you get into the building? How are visitors entering controlled in the facility? Looking at things from an educational standpoint, from the classroom standpoint, are you able to meet the program needs that you have, the curriculum goals that you have? We look at everything down to nuts and bolts, structural, walls, ceilings, floors. We benchmark against the Americans with Disabilities Act and against Michigan codes, which includes the Michigan Barrier Free Code, mechanical and plumbing, and then electrical. So all those things are looked at as we go through the facilities. So as an overview, your facilities, compared to other districts in the state, are in very good condition. They're very well maintained. It's fairly new facilities. You have a few older facilities, but for the most part, everything is in very good condition. You have enough teaching stations, enough classrooms to house the number of students that you have. So you don't have any deficiencies there. So really the items that are the real deficiencies are from changes in safety and security requirements, normal aging of the facilities, changes in the codes and standards. Every few years the codes and standards change, and then also advances in technology. Things like fluorescent lighting is changing to LED lighting, which is more efficient. So things like that. So we took that list of deficiencies, and then those were prioritized with a group of administrators, including Rex Clary, who helped us quite a bit through this process. And we looked at what are the critical needs versus what are the needs that we could postpone a little bit and defer. We then sorted those into 6 categories: safety and security, infrastructure, program, energy, athletics, and technology. And this really forms the foundation of a long-term capital planning program. So now we're going to go through the building details, building by building. Do you have any questions about kind of the process and how we got to this point before we move on? Okay. All right, we're going to start with the high school. And the high school was built in 2004. So we have a total of $14.2 million worth of the highest priority needs. A little bit of security and safety, a lot of program needs, infrastructure needs, some energy needs, and athletics and technology. And I'll just briefly go through some of those. So safety and security, as you're approaching the facility, we need to add some turn lanes so that cars can get by as students and parents are waiting to get into the site. And then also upgrading emergency and egress lighting. You have, I think overall throughout the district, there are a lot of needs from the standpoint of paving, parking lots, drives, things like that. The weather has not been good to pavements in Michigan, and that's showing quite a bit here at Saline. There's also just kind of your normal wear and tear type items, doors, door hardware, flooring, drywall, stair treads, plumbing fixtures, things like that that need to be updated throughout the years. And then also looking at things like adding freezers and coolers to your emergency generator, so if there is a power outage, you don't lose all your frozen and refrigerated goods. From the educational program standpoint, remodeling your existing Project Lead the Way classrooms. In closing, there's an atrium outside of the cafeteria that the culinary program could utilize as a dining room space. It could also function as a large group instruction space if that were enclosed. Looking at providing additional furnishings to support collaborative learning opportunities. You have some unused corridor alcoves that some of them have been converted recently into kind of breakout educational spaces, looking at converting other alcoves into those spaces, and then looking at flexible furnishings and technology to support the next gen concept. From the energy standpoint, looking at optimizing your mechanical system so that you're using as minimal amount of energy as possible. Looking at things like adding smaller boilers to provide that initial heating startup in the what they call the shoulder seasons, so the spring and the fall. Adding variable frequency drives, which allows you to fluctuate the fan speeds rather than having a fan running continuously. Adding things like CO2 sensors so that you're bringing in only the amount of outside air required to satisfy the needs of the users within the space. And then upgrading your lighting and your energy management system, adding controls to your lighting systems, things like that that'll save your operational dollars and hopefully allow you to then use those for program needs. With athletics, looking at doing some improvements at the tennis courts, replacing synthetic turf, there are some issues with the entry to the stadium and how the drives are located there and drop-off areas, and just reorganizing that for safety. And then improving some drainage north of the main field. And this is the site plan, so you can see the areas of parking and drives that would be improved. We don't have the turn lanes shown on here, but those would need to be added. And then the tennis courts, replacing the turf at the stadium and the soccer field, and then reorganizing the entry plaza for the stadium. I don't have a floor plan of the building because it's so large, and to really show any detail on there, it really didn't make any sense. So with the other buildings, you'll see that there's a floor plan. Are there any questions on the high school?
Just a couple of quick items. One is, I think, one of the things that you'll see on the high school, and you'll see this on a couple of other ones, there's significant investment in infrastructure and things around this energy. I think there are two things. One is, I think that those are the areas that are changing, those areas where technology has changed and will allow for a return on investment. One of the key strategies of this is not only to improve our systems as it relates to how we manage those facilities, but ultimately lower our ongoing costs associated with managing those. The amount of money that we spend on energy is astronomical. And when we talk about needs around class size and other programmatic things, in order for us to do that, it really needs to be that we're lowering our ongoing operational costs. And to the extent that we can make improvements to our facilities in terms of their overall, I say comfortability, their overall educational envelope, we can also then generate program savings that can be driven back into the classroom. So I think when you see the numbers are large, particularly at both the high school and the middle school, one, those are significant square footage facilities, but ultimately have a real opportunity for us for a return on investment. So.
Okay, so the middle school built in 1976 has about $12.6 million worth of identified needs. Adding a secure vestibule, so that secure vestibule is where you come in the first set of doors and the inside set of doors would be locked. You have to buzz in or go directly into an office to gain access to the building. So here at the middle school, it would be adding a secure vestibule that would have a buzz-in type system. Replacing exterior doors around the building. A lot of those are hollow metal and subject to rusting. When they rust, they don't close properly. So if you can replace those with something like a fiberglass reinforced plastic or an aluminum system, you have a much more secure exterior of the building. Getting rid of any vinyl asbestos tile flooring and replacing that with a new resilient flooring. Looking at emergency generators, fire alarm systems, and then access control and surveillance throughout the building. Educationally, we need to look at an additional space for Project Lead the Way. The media center, if you've been in there, it needs some significant redesign. There's no natural light. It's a very dark and it's not an inspiring place to be. So looking at redesigning that, and then again looking at the furnishings and technology to support next gen. Here at the middle school, again, we have parking lots and drives in poor condition that need to be upgraded. Looking at providing natural light to interior classrooms. Natural light actually improves student achievement. There are many studies that show that. And then looking at, again, the damaged and worn systems throughout the building. And then finally, updating the auditorium seating. Replacing air handling units, and again, those would be kind of those optimized units so that we're bringing in outside air when it's required and not when it's not required. The entire domestic water system throughout the building needs to be replaced. We look at drinking fountains, upgrading the electrical service so that we can provide power for the technology systems, and then replacing the clock and bell system. From an energy standpoint, replacing the outdated chiller and then upgrading the lighting to LED. Athletics, we have, again, similar issues with the tennis courts, and then we have some locker rooms that don't meet barrier-free standards, and so we would look at remodeling those. Here's the site plan showing the areas of pavement that would be improved. Here's the floor plan showing areas of improvement, such as the media center, adding the secure vestibule, looking at a project Lead the Way remodeling, the locker room remodeling, adding skylights into interior classrooms. There's a few interior classrooms there. So that's the floor plan view of that. And are there any questions on the middle school? You're going to kind of see some similar themes as we go through here. Okay, Heritage, built in '97, has about $7 million of identified needs. Safety and security, looking at reconfiguring, and this is the drop-off area between Heritage and Woodland. Reconfiguring the parent drop-off and bus loop configuration there, and it's a pretty significant change, so we'll show you that on the site plan. Adding a secure vestibule, again replacing the hollow metal exterior doors, and then adding access control systems. Educationally, we heard that they've added some furnishings in the pods. We want to make sure that those are code compliant, so we need to do some remodeling to make sure that's okay. And then, again, looking at the furnishings and technology for next gen. Here at Heritage, we need to look at replacing the roof. There's some interior spaces that could have some natural light added to them. And then again, replacing those worn out systems throughout the building. Energy, again, replacing rooftops and optimizing them for CO2 monitoring, adding the energy management, and then replacing lights with LED. Okay, so here's the site plan, and this is concept G, so you can see we've gone through several different concepts, and these are certainly subject to modification and change, but basically you have Woodland Meadows, you have Heritage School here. We would look at creating a centralized bus pickup and drop-off area, having staff and parent parking areas that can access the main entry without crossing another vehicular path, and then we would bring parents in from either end into loops so that they wouldn't be stacking up on Woodland Drive as they enter the site. So the stacking area here would be pretty significant. But that's just one concept, and we'll certainly, as we approach the actual design, we'll work very closely with the schools to make sure that that functions exactly the way they would like it to. Do you have any questions on that?
There will be no more painted cement areas, right?
No, there won't be. We'll have concrete islands and landscape berms and things like that. And here's the floor plan. So looking at doing some remodeling in the pods, and adding natural light, and securing those off, and looking at egress out of those spaces for using them as those extended learning spaces. And then reconfigurations here for the secure vestibule. All right, moving on to Harvest, $4.4 million, $4.5 million roughly of needs, built in 2002. So replacing some pavements, adding secure vestibule at the main entry, replacing the exterior doors, the secure control systems and video surveillance. That's very similar to the other buildings. Educationally, looking at doing some remodeling. There are several areas in the building that there are kind of small rooms that are kind of clustered in what I'll call a hive or a cell configuration. We want to look at making that more efficient and functional. Things like the categorical and sensory room, you have to actually go out in the hallway to get between those, even though they're used by the same population. So we want to make sure that those are connected internally. Remodeling the computer lab to pick up some efficiency and hopefully gain that space in the media center. Developing some storage for the music room, and then furnishings and technology for next gen. Drives and parking lots, Warren Systems, similar things here. Replacing the air conditioning with a new central chiller, and then changing the fire suppression system to a dry pipe system so you don't have water in the pipes. If a sprinkler head does open, the air evacuates and then the water comes in. that helps with the some of the freeze issues that you've had with your piping in that building. Again, energy is similar, optimizing for CO2, adding energy management. You've got attic heaters in there to keep your pipes from freezing. We can eliminate those if we go to the dry pipe system, and then replacing the lighting. So here's the site plan. There's a bit of paving, some sidewalks, and then adding a sidewalk that connects over to the high school for those overflow parking needs.
In addition, if you're there during the day, that a lot of our students from our connecting program and our teaching program walk back and forth, and so having an appropriate, safe transit way for pedestrian traffic to flow between those two buildings is another step.
Right. And then from the floor plan standpoint, looking at remodeling in the second floor areas, the special ed, the sensory room, the computer lab, and a little bit in the media center, and then the secure vestibule at the main entrance. Questions at Harvest? Okay, Pleasant Ridge, built in 1990, has about $5.4 million worth of identified needs. So this building's a little different. The admin area is in the center of the building, so in order to create that secure entry, we need to relocate the office to the outside of the building. So we're looking at flip-flopping the art and Spanish room and bringing those to the interior and moving the office area out to the exterior. And then exterior doors, fire alarm systems, access control and surveillance systems are similar to the other buildings. Educationally, looking at the flexible furnishings and technology for next gen. Parking lots and drives. Here looking at playground surface upgrades. I think you've seen some of the images of your surfacing. Need to upgrade that. Replacing the roof and then replacing the worn systems. You have individual furnaces throughout that building for each classroom, and so we would replace those. There's underfloor ductwork. We want to get that out of there because a lot of those ducts actually flood. So we want to get those above the ceiling. Replacing the rooftop air handlers for the core spaces, and then replacing the clock and bell system. So here for energy, we have adding vestibule airlocks, upgrading the energy management system, and then replacing the lighting with LED. So the site plan shows the areas of improvement. Replacing or resurfacing the parking and drive areas. This isn't highlighted, but we would improve the playground area surfacing out there. And then the floor plan. This is kind of an overall, kind of diagrammatic floor plan. Looking at the switch between admin and the Spanish and art areas, and I'm going to flip to the next one because this is a detail image. So here's the main entry right now. Your current office entry is right here. So we would flip art and Spanish into the center area, and we would move the staff lounge and office area out to the outer space within the building. So it creates that secure vestibule. So when the kids are in the building in the morning, these doors are locked, and you would come in the front door, you would enter, either be buzzed in here, or just have this door open. You have to enter in and check in at the office before you can get into the rest of the building. And this is just really a test to see if the concept works. So the actual layout of this could change a little bit as we go through the programming phase of the project. Any questions on that?
I got a question on that.
Yes.
Can you compare the square footage to what the current office space is versus the art and Spanish rooms? Are we talking equal division or?
They are roughly equivalent. I don't know exactly right offhand. I don't have a CAD floor plan. I've looked at them from a PDF standpoint, and I believe they're equivalent. It may not be 100% identical, but.
And then, I mean, this is a lot of structural work, so
Yes.
any idea how long that would take from beginning
This could probably be constructed over a summer. And one of the things that we would, is the costs are built in here to add some skylights in here, so they're not interior classrooms. We want to make sure we get that natural light in there, particularly at art, where you want natural light for the color rendition. Other questions?
I would say, obviously our discussions here have been about that occurring over the summer.
Yes.
There may be some amount of staging, and when we've had construction projects in the past, literally it's, school ended at 11 June today.
Kids are walking out.
Yeah, right,
movers
literally
are
by
moving
1
in.
o'clock,
Right.
the demolition has begun and our intention is to be open.
Okay, so Woodland Meadows, built in '97, has about 5.7 of needs. So here again, this is reconfiguring the parent drop-off as you saw before, adding a secure vestibule, replacing exterior doors, fire alarm systems, and then access control. Educationally, similar to Heritage, remodeling the pods so they can use them as breakout learning space, and then providing the furnishings and technology for next gen. Replacing the roof, replacing the worn out systems, and then replacing the clock system. Replacing rooftop units and with the CO2 monitoring, energy management, LED lights, you see the theme. And here's the floor plan. So remodeling the pods, and then remodeling at the main entrance, and this would actually be an addition to the building to create that secure vestibule. Any questions on Woodland?
Okay, so sorry, so what would be adding for the entryway? We'd be adding?
A secure vestibule.
Okay.
An addition for the
Changing
secure
front
vestibule.
door, it's just-
Right. A small addition. Okay, so at Liberty, built in 1959, $5.2 million worth of identified needs. So safety and security, replacing exterior doors, providing new emergency lighting throughout the building, and then upgrading the fire alarm system. From the program standpoint, we would be remodeling the alternative high school area so that it matches the level of finish and pride that you have at the other facilities in your district. Remodeling the life skills classroom, and then providing next gen furnishings and technology here as well. Again, we have parking lots and drives that need some work. We have a roof that needs to be replaced. We have damaged and worn systems throughout the building. We need to upgrade the electrical panels and feeders. Replacing the existing windows, which any of the existing windows that are single pane, non-thermally improved systems, adding vestibule airlocks, and then upgrading the lighting. One of the major changes here would be to change the parking scenario here along the front of the building so that there's nose-in parking. That'll increase the amount of parking spaces at the front of the building. And then these are the areas for your alternative high school program is currently using, and then remodeling some spaces back at the life skills area.
I think and I'll jump into kind of the Liberty. We had a lot of conversation about Liberty School really since we've transitioned away from Union and Houghton in terms of what will be the long-term use of this facility, what will it look like, and the focus in the upcoming bond proposal really is to look at the building envelope issues here. We're not exactly sure what programs will need to potentially move over time, as we anticipate likely growth down the road in our elementary buildings. What types of programs could move to this building in terms of an offset? We're not going to necessarily invest in those renovations now because we're not sure what that will actually look like. So our focus here truly is that building envelope. How can we make sure that if we did need to relocate other student programs here, that we have sufficient code updates, energy updates, and parking updates to make it as usable as possible with as little renovation investment at that time as necessary. So again, we've kind of tried to make sure we preserve this building and make sure that we maintain this as a facility that can be used long term. We're just not sure what 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years down the road will look like in terms of the program. So for us to go in and renovate classrooms in anticipation of X is not really, I think, a wise move. So that's been the focus here.
Other questions?
I have a question. When you went through all the different schools, all of the schools except for Liberty and the high school, you wrote down that there was a need for a secure vestibule. I'm curious why it wasn't part of the plan for Liberty or for the high school.
We can add a secure vestibule here, but the way we're actually approaching it is to secure off the area that comprises the alternative high school, as opposed to securing it off from the outside. So if you want to get into this space, you need to check in at the alternative high school office. That's one way to approach that security.
I had two things. One is, so first of all, the students are more important than the superintendent. Well, we think we knew that. The second thing is, we talked a little bit about the high school vestibule. There are a couple of different options in terms of how we would go about handling it. We don't intend to, do more in terms of necessarily the security on the north end. It's the daytime security, and that really, we've talked about altering that whole kind of configuration. It may not come in terms of a vestibule, because as you know, you go in and then you kind of go either way. We may be able to do some things where we direct traffic a little bit differently. So that actually made a note of that earlier, and we need to kind of get further, have further conversation on what that looks like.
We talk a lot about that within the PTO too, and with Mrs. Heller, because it's just depending on the time of year, different things happen at the high school, as you know. In the wintertime, you come in and Mrs. James is in another area, and they could sneak in.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So I was just curious what the thought process was behind that.
One, it points to two things. I mean, some people say that the high school building's new. That building was designed in 2000. It really predated a lot of the safety and security changes that have occurred in terms of how buildings are managed. And so that one, if you notice, at least initially when you could get into the high school office without going through anything. I mean, it was open, you just had to go up a set of stairs. And so we've really talked about just reconfiguring that area to allow, and there's some flexibility there, but I wouldn't call it a vestibule, because I think you may just reroute and kind of go through more of the guidance area all the time as you kind of come through the facility.
Just curious.
We just haven't figured it out yet.
Right. I just want my high school to be secure as well. That's all.
All right, so from a technology standpoint, the district has identified about $14 million in needs, things like classroom audio visual, computers for student use and teacher use, and network upgrades.
And I'll jump in here because ultimately, we didn't ask King Scott to get too far involved with technology other than some of the planning associated with that. It's really going to break down to a combination of device issues in terms of really understanding what our device and by device. And as you all know, we're BYOD. It doesn't necessarily mean student devices. We're not talking about going one-to-one, but we are talking about additional student devices. If you've heard the number of student devices that were purchased for our PTO, PTA, there has to be a sustainable way for us to continue to look at that device century. The other kind of component to that comes down to, we talk about projections, whiteboard, smart boards, almost. What are those other technology devices within a classroom? May not be for student use, but more for teacher or classroom use. How do we go about configuring those? So we've had allocations associated with that. This is another area where we don't want to be too specific in terms of saying we're going to buy X number of Chromebooks now in 2019 and in 2022. There needs to be some flexibility, understanding that technology changes in such a way that we want to make sure we have the opportunity to have an effective allocation so that we can meet the needs of our students and teachers. However, we're not going to want to pigeonhole ourselves into one specific area. And then the back end of that, and probably the more expensive end of that, is the network upgrades. The one thing we've continued to struggle with is how do we provide a network that's robust enough, because as soon as we put a stake in the ground at a certain bandwidth, in certain degree of saturation, that becomes not enough and insufficient. So we're in constant conversations about making sure we have a large enough kind of pipeline coming into the facility, and ultimately our network is capable of getting that bandwidth, getting that access to information, to the internet, to every corner of that facility in a stable, strong environment. So that continues to be a challenge for us, and we feel this allocation, while not as much as we would like, is appropriate and sufficient to get us where we need to go.
All right, so if we look at the sum total of everything that was identified in the facility assessment, including technology and buses, it totals about $114.6 million. As we've gone through with administration input and kind of trimmed that back, we're currently at about $75 million, and that includes $2 million in bus purchases. We still need to make some additional scope modifications in order to get us down to that $67 million kind of sweet spot, which is the 1 mil increase, which is your bond target. So we're still going to continue to work on this, but this kind of gives you the lay of the land as we see it right at this moment.
I think, and I'll jump back into one, I think we wanted to really take this off. If we talk about a planned approach to how we're going to invest these funds, first we need to know if we were to go out and say what are all the things we want to do. Understand that number is $114.6 million. We understand that's not really where our budget aligns, and we've been through that process and wanted to show at least initially where we started. We did hear the voices that came forward, so these are the areas we want to look to address, and now we need to make sure that we're working really thoughtfully in terms of how we go about spending those dollars. And the idea that we're going to generate those types of dollars in the short term really is not what we're talking about. We're really talking about, okay, how do we scale this in such a way that's effective and allows us to meet our priorities. We've gotten it down to 75. We're continuing to refine that. Rex Clary continues to kind of look at specific areas of need to try and make sure that our costs associated with these are accurate. We've worked with King Scott because the way we want to stage this with $67 million opportunity really is to say we're going to do $40 million in the first year and then two subsequent $13.5 million issuances. So the first one will be in 2016, the second one in 2019, and the third one in 2022. And in looking at that, we need to also allocate some escalation in costs. So we've allocated a 5 and 10% cost escalation as we move forward. So again, we've tried to be, as we've gone through this process and moved specific targeted items, and I'll use, the synthetic turf may move from 2016 to 2019 if we feel we can extend its useful life. And that's something where we have what's on the agenda later, facilities committee that we're putting together at the board table to really have those conversations as we move forward. How do we stage this out over time? Because I think that's going to be a critical piece of how we think about this, facility assessment and how it dovetails into a capital planning approach. But ultimately, it does. We're talking about a $67.5 million project. That was 1 mil increase over 20 years. It does include an extension of our existing and kind of a reallocation of our existing school bond loan fund dollars in terms of how we repay that. We will continue to repay that. We wouldn't borrow additional money, but allows us to defer and delay those payments still within our original target. Again, allows us to capture more revenue to make sure we're meeting those needs. But we're trying to put all these pieces together, and I think getting feedback from the board today and other community members will allow us to get to the 67.5. But understand, there are going to be things when we're talking about $115 million in need. There are going to be things that just aren't part of this initial planned approach, and we're going to need to look to the committee to say how do we go about meeting those down the road.
And by selling the bonds in 3 different series, we're not paying interest on everything all at once.
Right.
We're paying for it and being smart with the money.
The one thing, and I mentioned earlier, that for bond issues, if you issue bonds, you have to spend 85% of those proceeds within the first 3 years. And so for us to sell those and then try and sit on the money, that's just not feasible. And it really becomes that boom bust. And so again, I'll go back to one of the things we've heard with previous bond issues that we've had that have not been successful is what is the plan? What is the plan? How is this going to truly protect this significant investment that our community has made? I think the approach that we're taking now addresses that issue.
And we've also, like Brendan said, put an emphasis on return on investment so that savings can hopefully go back into the general funds, capital planning thing, so we can, actually start to have a capital planning and not have to wait 10 years to start doing all this stuff. So that will help. I do have one question.
Sure.
Back when some of these, in almost all the buildings were replacing exterior doors, the ones when we built those, were they state of the art at the time or state of the budget at the time?
I think they were probably state of the budget.
Okay.
Because hollow metal doors are kind of your good version as opposed to the better and best.
Someone's gonna ask that.
They're low cost initially, they're high maintenance over time, and as they rust and corrode, you have to continually maintain them in order to make sure that they close appropriately. And I did want to kind of tag on to what Heidi was saying about the phasing of this. Not only does it avoid the interest, but it also allows you then to make bus and technology purchases over time, as opposed to spending that money at one lump sum early on and then having the technology not outlive the life of the bond. So it does help spread that out over time. One more slide.
More presentations. So this presentation will be made tomorrow morning at 10:30 a.m. I'll be at Rude Awakenings to talk about this. I won't have the PowerPoint, but I'll have printed versions again to get some feedback as we continue to try and inform ourselves as to the community's interest in some of the areas we're talking about. And then again here at 6:30 on Monday. I should say 16th, it should be the 15th.
15th.
So Monday the 15th here allows us to kind of get more feedback before we go. We do need to have this to the jury for initial preliminary review on the 25th of June, and it will come back to the board on June 30th, as we talked about conducting a special meeting on June 30th. So,
The meeting on the 15th, are we going to email loop out the entire district? Come on out.
send a note out this afternoon via social media about both of those. I guess a more formal notification, particularly about the one on the 15th. Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you, Brandon. Heard that so many, more than once, so I think I can almost do the presentation. It's good. Let's move on to action items. Can I have a motion to approve the renewal of the food service management contract with Chartwells for the 2015-2016 school year as recommended by Assistant Superintendent Warner?
So,
Second.
Before we turn over to Janice, this is a function of the process and timeline. Obviously, you may feel like, hey, didn't we just do this kind of thing? And we won't necessarily do this every year, but this is part of that process as we move forward, just in terms of timing of when we transitioned earlier this year.
So we did enter into the agreement with Chartwells midway through the year, and we do have to renew the contract actually every year. And so as part of that, we had to submit a lot of documentation up to the state, the Department of Education. They approved it, and we received the written approval on May 22nd. So now the board has to approve it, and then we will go ahead and sign the documents and get that in. We've been very happy with the management services that Chartwells has provided this year. We're looking forward to next year and having them be here for the full year. I think it was a little difficult for everyone to implement that mid-year, and I'm sure they're looking forward to getting everything set up this summer as we are. And I think Jim Davis, the director, would like to speak to the board.
Dragging his friends along.
Good evening. With Chartwells, we promised to do some things for the community and for the school district. So tonight I'd like to actually present a check for $5,000 to the Culinary Arts Program, and this is a check that Chartwells will present each year of our 5-year contract. So with this check, the Culinary Arts Program can take care of scholarships and then also competitions.
Excellent.
Get over there for a picture for training.
I have a question. Why the state approval process? Why? What is their deep interest in food service contracts? Do we know?
I think it has a lot to do with the federal funding that flows through school nutrition programs, and so they have to follow the federal guidelines, and that gets passed on to us.
Why is it more stringent in terms of the food program than virtually any other educational program? You mean?
Yes,
Okay.
that kind of thing, because I'm thinking.
We
of
asked that
their-
question several times
Yes.
during the process.
Well, I'm thinking of their own contracts with their prison system that seem to be a failure, so. Anyway, sorry, I said I'd be good tonight. Is there any other questions? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Can I have a motion to adopt the Michigan High School Athletic Association membership resolution for 2015-2016 as submitted by Superintendent Graydon? Tim?
This is our annual membership resolution for 2015-2016. Obviously, the Michigan High School Athletic Association is the governing body for high school athletics.
I think with our successes in sports, they wouldn't
they
want
don't-
us
they don't-
anymore.
well, nor do they waive it based on performance either, so we still have to pay our dues and participate. So.
Any questions? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Can I have a motion to renew membership in the Michigan Association of School Boards for 2015-2016?
So moved.
Support.
This is our
Our
annual
governing body.
dues to the Michigan Association of School Boards, which provide us with training, some legal advice on occasion, evaluation tools, all kinds of good stuff. I love and speaking of which, there are some training opportunities coming up that we'll talk about, so good thing. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Discussion items, budget committee update.
June 1st we met, kind of looked at the 14-15 budget, kind of where that was going to be at, and fund balance is inching up, which is nice. Some of that's one-time money, like the Houghton School sale and the Act 18 money, but it is inching up. And then looked at kind of the 15-16 where the state was going to put us dollar-wise. It looks like foundation allowance, we're going to be $139. They're going to take out best practice performance-based funding, so we lose $120, but we'll get $10 for
At risk.
At risk, yeah. So it's $29 per pupil, $140. So it's not great, not a negative.
The shell game continues.
Our next meeting, I think we're going to discuss the adopting the 14-15 final budget and then the 15-16.
Yeah, I think there'll be a budget adoption meeting at 6 o'clock
Yep.
next.
On the 23rd, there'll be a 6 o'clock meeting and followed by a 6:30 meeting.
So did the governor sign the budget yet? Do we know?
I have not seen any of this.
Those numbers that we discussed at budget were the ones that
They were what they ended up
It went
bringing
through
back.
committee
Yeah,
and
what's coming.
is on his desk.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd anticipate it. So.
I'll save my comments for the budget resolution next week. Capital Planning and Facilities Committee, we have decided, since we're embarking on this bond and building thing, that we really need some oversight. Heidi has agreed to chair that committee since she has extensive background in this thing, and working with administrators, come up with a planned approach to doing what we need to do to keep our facilities up. So that will be a new board committee, probably starting in the fall. We're kind of working together as a bond committee right now, and it'll get smaller. So we're looking forward for that. Consent agenda. Can I have a motion to authorize the following items as part of the consent agenda? Items A, B, C, and D. Tim? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Items on the next agenda. We have We have a budget hearing at 6 o'clock, where we'll formally adopt the 2015-2016 budget. And at the meeting, we got it, I don't remember.
Well, that's the focus, is the budget and
Budget.
the bond update as well.
And you're gonna do a climate
Yes, you know, report to climate
climate
results.
survey report. Find other exciting things. This is the second opportunity for public comment. Does anyone wish to make public comment? Thank you. Our next meeting of the Board of Education will be held on June 23rd, 2015 at 6:30. That will be the regular meeting. The budget meeting will be at 6 o'clock, both here at Liberty School Media Center. Can I have a motion to adjourn the regular Board of Education meeting of June 9th, 2015 at 7:57 p.m. Second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Hearing none, meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everyone.